Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Meredith, one of the Pfaff Educators, and I'm excited to be celebrating National Quilting Month with you all. And we're going to be going through some different quilting features that I like, that I feel like we sometimes forget about, and even I forget about sometimes, and just some ins and outs of those things, just the basics, going back to the basics of piecing and different things like that, but using some of the great features that the Pfaff machines have to make those simple features even more easier. So if you have any questions or anything like that as we go along, feel free to type them in the chat, and Amy is in the background today and she will send those over to me. If we don't know the answer to it, we will figure it out and we'll come back and answer that for you later. And if you're watching this later, feel free to continue to type in those questions and comments, because we do check those for about a week or so afterwards. A couple things I wanted to mention that are changing with Facebook in particular, because we stream to Facebook and to YouTube. We go live on both of them. But Facebook is getting rid of any live that is older than 30 days. But don't worry. They can all be found on our YouTube channel, Pfaff North America YouTube channel. You can find every single past live and even more live, or more, I don't want to say lives, more videos specifically on our Pfaff YouTube channel. What you can do, though, so that you don't miss out on any of them, is you can click, I think it's subscribe, or is it follow? What's the word, Amy, I'm looking for? Is it subscribe?
It is subscribe. Yep.
Subscribe. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get little notifications when we go live, or later on any videos, things like that we have coming. So feel free to go over and do that as well. But again, they will still be on Facebook for about 30 days. So if you know that it's coming and you're watching it a week or so later, you can still get it there as well. But let's get into it. So we are going to start just with the basics of normal piecing and how projection can help you with that. So I am using the Creative Icon 2 today. And most of what I'm going to be doing today can be done on the original Creative Icon 1, the Creative Icon 2, the Performance Icon, and then the Pfaff 950, which is one of our newer machines, just sewing only machines that came out recently. So, no, that isn't, I'm losing my mind with all of them.
Creative Performance 950.
And it's embroidery. It's not, I'm like, wait, I'm sitting here second guessing what I said. The Creative, and that's how you know if it's creative. If it says the word creative, it's embroidery in it. That's why I was like, wait, does it have that? So the Creative Performance 950 does embroidery and sewing as well. But all of the features I'm showing you today can be done on those. Some of these features can be done on other machines too. It just depends. Amy and I were just looking quickly up the top of the line ones that we knew that could do it, that were pretty equal to this. So let's get to it. We're going to come over to the screen first. And to open up projection, I'm going to back out of that so you can even see there. This little icon right up here, it's like, it still is going to be, let me turn it off and it should. There you go. So now it looks like a little pyramid. You can see it a little bit better now. That little pyramid, that's going to be our projection. So we're going to touch that and we're just going to turn it on completely, just like that. And you'll hear a little hum, and that means that it's going. It's like whenever you turn a projector on at work or at school or anything, you hear that little hum, you know that it's going. So down here, you're going to see all of these different subcategories now. So let's go to projection options. We can change the brightness of it, so we can make it a little bit duller. And you can't really see that over here right now, but you can change that. You can change the background color as well if you wanted to. So we can go over to our color wheel. Here's our quick colors right here, but you can also, I love this, you can change it to whatever you need. And you see how bright that got over here? So if I go back to my black, and you can't really see my little square lit up, and I go to white, and you can see it now. So really play around with that depending on the fabric. It does take a little bit sometimes if you've got a particular fabric that may not want to be showing up. But once you get the right color, background, and lines and everything, it's great. So you have those different options there. We're going to minimize this one now. Come on. Why is that? Oh, it's because I have to touch OK there. There we go. Now we're going to go to stitch preview. So what the stitch preview is this is going to show the stitch that you have on your screen right now. So let me come over here, and I'm just going to choose a little fancy one. Let's find one of these let's do these little leaves right here. So I'm going to switch over here to this camera, and I'm going to let me find some fabric to stick under here really quick. So this is white on a really light color, so you really can't see that very well. So let's come back over here, And we're going to go to stitch preview again. Let's actually change our background color. Let's go back to black here because now I can see it a little bit better. Oh, wrong one, this one here. Now you can see my stitches coming out, but let me turn off the grid too because we don't need that grid in there right now. And now you can see those stitches a little bit better right there. And so that's how you would change. You see how quickly I just played around with a little bit of the colors and things like that, and it shows up a lot better. You can, again, change that color if you would like to. Black doesn't show up on black. I'm trying to find another one that's bright. The green is pretty bright here, too. You can see the green on that black right there. So that is going to be your stitch preview. So, again, whatever stitch you're sewing is your stitch preview. The next thing that I just turned off is the grid. So if we wanted to have things lined up equally, like if you were doing a little label or something, you could have your grid on there. I'm going to change that color that's on the black. And you can see that a little bit better here. Hopefully you can see that grid shows up a little bit more. But we can also, what's really neat and helpful is you can change your grid size. Oh, I always forget I got to touch OK there. We can I'm going to increase my grid here. And you can hopefully see my squares. Amy, can y'all see that good right there? I'm looking at the little screen and I can't tell. Does that look clear enough for you guys to see those squares getting bigger?
I think it looks pretty clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can make these squares go all the way up to 30 millimeters. Look at that. Big squares. So if you're wanting to do crosshatch quilting or just straight line quilting, this is super helpful for that there. So we're going to put this back down. Let's just go back to 8 there. So again, we can change the color of our grid if we want to. I've got it set for white right now. You can change the position of it. So I'm going to move this left or right, and you're going to see here as I do that. Let me make them. I'm going to go back and make that. Let's go to our grid size to 20 so you can see them move a little bit more. So I can move my grid. Just like you have the option to move your needle to get the stitch exactly where you want it, you can move your grid to get it lined up with whatever it is. So you don't have to necessarily move your fabric. Work with moving your needle or moving your grid or your stitch line, things like that. So let's go. We can change our angle too. So we have default settings of 0 and 45. So if you look over here, I'm going to change that to 45. So it gives you more of those on point squares versus the straight on if I was at 0. So that's another great thing there. Give me 1 second here. Okay. And so down here we have stitch. I'm going to minimize this one. We have stitch guide 1 and stitch guide 2. So let me turn the grid back off so you can see these lines. So I have stitch guide 1, and I'm going to turn my stitch preview off too. So now you can see that red line. This is going to be our stitch guide 1. This is going to be not necessarily where, it's not your stitch line. So it's not where our needle is going to go into place. It's going to be a guideline. So I'm going to show you a couple of reasons or a couple of ways we would use this line. And what's great is I can adjust it. So I can move it. I can move my vertical position or I can move my horizontal. This is really what you're going to move is going to be your horizontal position, left or right. So when we get into half square triangles and me showing you how easy it is to do half square triangles, we can adjust that there. You can also change the angle of it. So you see how my angle went there at a 45 or straight on or a 45 the other way. You could change the angle of it if you're wanting to line it up with something. And so the stitch guide 2 is the exact same thing, but it's going to give you another guideline. So once I turn that on, you can see that I have my stitch guide 1 is my red line and my stitch guide 2 is my green line. Another neat feature is you can make this super bold. So I have my stitch line at an 8, which is as bold as you can get, or you can make it more faint and you can really barely see it there. I personally, I've got super, super bad eyes. I like to keep it at that 8 right there. So same things that you have in stitch guide 1, you're going to find in stitch guide 2 as well. So let's go ahead and turn all of these off right now. We're just going to start fresh here. And let's do some half square triangles. So with half square triangles, you want to line up. Let me get two of my pieces over here. 1 second. They're sticking together. You're going to have two squares, and you would put them together, right sides together. And we are not going to sew down the middle of this, but we want to sew 1/4 of an inch to the left and 1/4 of an inch to the right, so that we get two of these little half square triangles right here. You can see there are two colors there, and you can fold them open and you get two more blocks to work with. So I'm going to show you how we can use the projection and the stitch guide and all of that to make these a lot easier. And you don't have to draw all the lines. Like, it's not fun sitting there drawing those lines on either side and then sewing down them. With the projection and the stitch guide, it's going to make it super easy. So let's come over here first. We're going to turn projection back on here. And we are going to start with our stitch preview. We're going to turn that on. And I'm going to come back, I want this one here, to a straight stitch right there. And then we're going to go back to projection. So now, if you look right here, this green line, this is my stitch line. This is going to be what my stitch is right there. But again, I don't want to sew. If I line I have my foot off now so you can sort of see, I don't want to line up my point with that because I'm not sewing straight down the middle there. I want my stitch line actually 1/4 of an inch off. So if I come back over here and I do my stitch, touch my stitch guide and turn that on, we are going to, oh, I want that at a 0. There we go. Let me show you one thing. That gets me into this point here. So I don't know millimeters to inches. I can get my phone out and do that conversion. But a way around that is if you come up here to settings, and you're going to have to remember that you turn this on, because when we're in embroidery, everything is done by millimeters, all of our hoops, everything like that. So don't forget to turn it back on to millimeters once you're done with your piecing. So we are going to come right here to units, and we're going to change it to inches. So now I've got this right here. So we want 0.25. And that's going to be 1/4 of an inch right there. So now if I come back over here and I've got this red line, that's 1/4 of an inch off. So I want my point to point to meet up with that guideline so that I'm sewing 1/4 of an inch off of our points. So we are going to put on the 0A foot. And the reason I know that, you don't have to put on the 0A foot. You could definitely put on a piecing foot if you wanted to. This one here, which we're going to come back to that one too. But we can just use the 0A foot for now. Where's my, there it is. Because I want to use my IDT as well. This is another thing that we're going to talk about a little bit in a little bit, that IDT and how helpful that is. So what this is it's basically a walking foot that is on top of your fabric. So you have your feed dogs on the bottom that move your fabric. But then we have this on top. And what it's doing is it's basically sandwiching your quilt pieces, your quilt sandwich. If you've got a quilt sandwich together, whatever it may be, it's going to move it evenly on top and bottom. So it's grabbing both of the fabrics. So if you have that option to have the IDT engaged, definitely have it engaged there. So what we're going to do here, let me move my cords out of the way. We're going to line this red line up with the point, the corner point right here, and we're just going to sew straight down. Nope, and I can already tell. It's because I started. Hold on, y'all. Let me double check this down here. I could already tell it was pulling up an extra thread. When we're live, that's when it likes to do that, huh? So let's get that line back up again right there. I've got my point lined up with my red line right here. And I'm just making sure that this red line is going to meet up with my point down here at the bottom. You'll notice when I start sewing, that stitch line actually goes away. You see that green line? That green line disappears. Let me make that. I can't make that any bolder. I wish I could make that bolder. But that green line goes away, but your stitch guide stays there the whole time. And that's the same with the grid. So if we had the grid on as well, we could, the grid would still be there just like our stitch guideline. So there's one stitch there. But we have to do the other side of that now. Got a long tail here. So there's a couple ways we can do this. We don't want to just line up our stitch line with this red line right here. So what we can do is we can make this stitch, or the stitch guide, we can make that a 1/2 inch. Because if we make that a 1/2 inch, that moves our center over a little bit more that way. And so I'm just going to put the line I just sewed along that red line. So that's one way we could do it. Or we could do it where we go negative 0.25 like that. So then it moved it over here. Did I do that right? Actually, I think I got to think about it. I'm getting myself spun around. I don't think it'll. Let's see. Hold on. If I put this back at 2.5 there. Okay. There we go. So if I put this back at 0.25, not negative, I'm sorry. That's why I was like, that's not right. I can line up that point again, line those up there. But I kind of like lining up my stitch line that I've already done. So I'm going to put that back at a 1/2 inch, which is double a 1/4 inch. And I'm going to line up my red line with my sewn line already there. So just like that. And then I'm just lining up that red line all the way down, just like that, until I get to the end. And then we're going to cut. Any questions so far, Amy, about the projection or anything I can explain again with the settings, things like that, or with the half square triangles? Again, it's just think about what works best for the situation you're in. So I definitely could have moved my needle if I wanted to get it to a 1/4 inch and still lined up my points with the different, like there's so many different combinations you could have done with it. But in the end, you're going to get these 2 lines. If y'all can see them, let's see if you can see them better. Nope, not better there. You're going to get those 2 lines. And basically, if you cut down the middle, so I've got my little rotary blade and mat here. Let me cut this. You're going to end up with these 2 triangles like this. And so when you open them and press them back, there is your half square triangle. So, Amy, any questions or anything? I didn't give you a chance to actually
would like to see the back of the stitch. I don't know if you can maybe hold those like in front of the needle. You might get a better, clearer view of them.
So I had my, let's try this. This is the back side here because I had my yellow, I had my yellow side up. Can you see that, Amy? So that's my back side, and this is my front side. Is that clear enough, Amy?
That looks pretty clear to me.
Okay.
Somebody else is asking if you would go back to the process of like turning on the projection. Just go through that quickly again.
Yeah, definitely. So right over here, let's turn our projection off for a minute. Right over here, you're going to see all of your little icons. This first little pyramid one, that is going to be your projection right there. So I have my brightness turned down just for camera purposes. It just works better, lighter. But to turn that on, we're just going to touch the on button right there. And then we have all of our subcategories. So your projection options, you can change what color you have underneath right here. So if I go to white, you can see how it got brighter over here on the corner. We have our stitch preview, which is looking at the stitch that you are going to be sewing, and you can change the color of it. We have our grid. So if we wanted to turn our grid on, that's going to give you all of our grid lines. We're going to go, let me go back to projection options because black is better, and then white for my grid. So you can see that over here. So there's my grid. And then I've got, it's kind of hard to see, but right there along that green line is my straight stitch that I just did. And then there's my stitch guide, which is going to be stitch guide number 1. Stitch guide number 1 right there I have on. And if I wanted a second line, I've got that there, that option as well. So does that answer those questions?
So the person who asked about seeing the stitches gave some clarification here. What you'd like to see is the beginning, because she is having issues with her thread looping on the bottom. So I would say let her know how she can avoid having her thread loop on the bottom when she starts sewing.
So first off, you want to just rethread it. If you're having loopings, always rethread it. And if you're going to take the time, I'm a rusher. Like I rush. I move with the purpose, get things done. But if I'm going to take the time to rethread my top thread, I'm going to rethread my bobbin as well. Just even if I don't think there's any issues and I can clearly see it through the bobbin case cover, I'm still going to rethread it. So that's going to be my first tip: rethread. So I will do another one of these here for you. We're going to do a 1/4 inch half square triangle. So I've got one of my half square triangle pieces right there, along with a flat piece or a single piece right there. So we're going to end up with this little guy right here. So let's go back over here. I'm going to turn my grid off. I don't need that right now. And we're going to do the other. Actually, we're going to move our stitch guide back to 0. And you have to type in 0 first. I don't know why that is. Like I want to go 0.25 and you can't do that. You have to type in 0 first. I'm not sure why. So we're going to do 0.25 just like that. We're going to come over here. And again, my green line is my sew line. Okay. And then my red line back here is going to be where I'm going to guide my points. So my point and my point right there. But I want to make sure I'm not going down the center there. I want to go this way. So let's do it this way, actually, so you can see my half square triangle that I already have. So another thing that you can do also, I wanted to be able to show you this, is you can hold your thread right here. And I will sometimes too. In a perfect world, you do not have to pull your bobbin thread up. Very rarely do I pull my bobbin thread up. But if for whatever reason my machine is in a mood that day, which I truly believe our machines have feelings and they get in moods some days, you can pull both of those threads up and we can hold them there. So I will start. Goodness, this cord, I'm sorry. I don't know why this cord has never been an issue, and I don't know why it's an issue today. Hold on a second, sorry. Okay, so again, I'm going to line my red line up with my points, and I'm just going to sew straight down because my green line is going to go 1/4 inch off right here. So we're sort of just going to hold our threads right there as we start going. And keep going just like that. And then we can cut. Another thing I will mention is if you do not have, let me reach down and get it because I think everybody needs one. If you don't have a multifunction foot control, you need one. So I have it set to where I can tap one way. Watch this. I'm going to push this. Watch here. I'll do it here. And it's going to cut like that. My other side, I have it set to start and stop, but you can set it to many different things. So if you're a quilter or sewist in general, this is a great thing to have. When I don't have it, I feel weird. You know, it's like sewing without your shoes on. When I don't have that particular foot pedal, I feel weird. So that is how I have my first. So bright today. The sun is shining in Dallas today and it's coming through and it's bright. So that's my first seam. So let's go back over here and do our second seam as well. So we're just going to turn this around. And again, I don't want to line my stitch line up with this red line. I want to line my points up because I haven't moved it. And again, if you want to see, I'll pull my threads over here so you can see again. I'm just going to hold my one thread over here as it starts to go. So just like that. Oh, and I went against my seam. Y'all are probably yelling at me as I'm doing it too. So what I could have done is actually just moved my guideline over because it pushed it a little bit. I don't like that there, but that's okay. So I'm going to cut this really quick and show you. So again, that's how easy it is. I didn't have to draw lines or do anything like that. And I end up with this fun little half square triangle here. So super simple and easy to do half square triangles if you do a lot of quilting and things like that. Any other questions on that before I move on to the next thing?
I don't see any more questions.
Okay. That must mean I'm doing a great job today. But if there are questions or you want to see something again, feel free. Okay. So next, I was debating, do I switch to something else or do I stick with this for a minute? So I think I'm going to stick with piecing just for a second before we go to the patchwork program. So another couple ways that you could benefit and your piecing benefit from this is there are piecing feet. So there is this foot that comes with your machine and it's a piecing foot, and this right here is 1/4 inch. And then there's also a piecing foot with a guide. I personally like the little one with the flange on the end of it like that, because then I can just put my fabric up against it and just go along. But another thing you can do, so let me show you what those look like really quick here.
Meredith, before you go too far,
Yes.
we had a couple people pop up and say they're not sure what you're cutting after you finish stitching those.
Oh, my thread. I'm cutting my thread. You want to see?
No, I think they mean the fabric. Like
Oh.
where and what are you cutting
Yeah.
when you're putting those pieces apart?
Okay, hold on a second. We've got time. Let me just sew up another one of these really quickly here. So I'm going to just use my foot that I have on here. I didn't put it in my camera view because I've got it right over here to the side and I only have so many cameras, but I'll show you again. So this shame on me for assuming people knew about half square triangles. So,
and maybe point out the scissors on the front of the machine as well. Because
yeah.
somebody else said she's new to Pfaff, so she may not know about that feature.
So I can use, again, my foot pedal and just swipe my foot to the left to do that. Or right up here, I'm hoping you can see, right here, it's really the color of the machine does not work for live. So right here, I have a scissor button. So if I touch that, it's going to cut my thread just like that. So that's one way. Let me get this camera back really quick without making you guys dizzy. So now what I'm going to do, let's see if I can take this back a little bit. You might get a little view of my little puppy in the background over there. We're trying something new today. I normally put him up in my bedroom, but he was not having that today. So he's right over here on his bed. Hopefully he'll be good and quiet today. So now that I have my 2 seams, I've got 1 seam here, 1 seam here, I'm going to line up my ruler, and I can line up my ruler with the points. I can put 1/4 inch on that seam I sewed, whichever way you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. And we're just going to cut straight down just like that. And now I have 2 half square triangles. So I had 2 pieces of material that I put together like this. Where are they at? Like this. So I had 2 pieces, and then I'm going to end up with this. And then if you sew another one to it, you could end up like that. Does that answer that question? Amy, we good there?
I think so. Remember, they're like 5 seconds behind. So
Yeah.
I think that answered it. Yeah.
Okay, let me get back in here. See, I can see that better. Okay. So we will move on from that. But if you want me to come back to it, I'm happy to go back and explain half square triangles again or go a little bit more in depth. That's fine too. Let's go on to just using the piecing foot here. So I just have my normal piecing foot on. I'm going to turn my projection off for right now. Because if you don't, so I want to make sure that I cover some things that if you don't have projection on your machine, which is fine, some things you can do to help make your quilting process a little bit easier. So you can use a 1/4 inch foot like I have here. You will notice on some of the machines on the stitch or on the bobbin plate right here, there is, let's see, there's a 1/4 inch line right there. So you can line that up there. So let's do that first. And then I'm going to show you something else with it. If you do have projection, but you don't have a piecing foot. So I've got a jelly roll strip here. While I'm here, I'm going to just go off script a little bit because I have a question and I would like y'all's feedback. So when you get a jelly roll strip, you know how they have the little pinking shear cuts. Do you put your guide on the points or do you put it inside the V? Let me know. I'm like, should we include that little bitty bit? It shouldn't matter, but in quilting, it really does matter. That little bit, like 1/16 of an inch there. So just curious if people go off of the point or off the inside of the point. I will usually go off the point. So right there. And when you're just quilting as well, you want to have a single stitch plate on here, but I didn't because I might be doing some wider. I am going to be doing some satin stitches and things like that later. So I didn't put my single whole stitch plate on, but you would like to do that as well. So again, how easy it is to just line my fabric up with the edge of my foot right there. So this is with the foot that comes with the machine, just the 1/4 inch foot right there. But if I put on the 1/4 inch with the guide, and the other thing, I didn't have my IDT engaged. You should always have your IDT engaged if you have that option. It makes a world of a difference. So if you do have a wish list and there's something you're really wanting, this is a foot that I have probably 2 of for each of my machines. You can line your fabric up along the guide and not really have to make many adjustments. And you'll notice that it lines up with the line on my bobbin plate, all of those things like that. But so those are some ways to do that. If you don't have a piecing foot or for whatever reason you've lost the one that came with your machine, anything like that, let's use the 0A foot. And we're actually going to make a 1/4 inch position. So if I come back over here, I want to go to my edit stitch right here. I just have a straight stitch on here. I want to move my position, and I have this in inches still, and I don't know actually what it is in that one, but let's go. I'm going to come back up here and go back to my millimeters because I know what it is in this one. It's 2.8. So let me touch OK. So we're going to go to 2.8. I'm moving my needle. You can see this line right here move. And so it's no longer centered. And I'm using my 0A foot as well. So I'm not using my piecing foot. But if you need more surface area for whatever it is you're piecing, so when you're using this guy, one of these feet, your fabric there's not much surface area that's going underneath the presser foot. But if I use this foot, I get even more surface area than I did. And so it's going to help keep everything together just a little bit easier along with the IDT in the back there. So we're using the 0A foot for this one today. I can never seem to get the feedback on if the IDT is already engaged. So now what I can do is I'm going to guide my fabric along the edge of my foot. And I know what it is. It's 2.8. I've done the measuring, but you can do that as well. So if you put your needle down a little bit and line this up with the edge of the foot, get a ruler, line this up at the edge of the foot, and my needle is lined up right here. So that's a 1/4 inch on my ruler right there. So now I can use the edge of my foot like that to have more surface area being covered with my presser foot there. If I wanted to move it over even more. So here's another thing we can do. We're going to cut there. I can't move it anymore. That's about as far as I could get it. It's going to be about 2.8 actually. But that is going to be a 1/4 inch, and it's going to be hard to see here, but you can see that that's right there. You see that? Hopefully. So any questions on different piecing ways to piece with the different feet, or using the feet you already have and then just adjusting, or moving the laser guide, all of those fun things. Lots of different options there. Any questions on that?
I don't see any questions, but we do have people mentioning where they measure on pinked fabric. So yes. A lot of people saying on the points. Somebody says they cut the points off. Somebody else, I avoid buying any pinked fabric.
No.
And here's one too that says they measure the strip. If it's more than 2.5 inches, then they go on the inside bump. And someone saying no matter what you do, use the same one throughout the entire process, the entire project. So, yep, lots of info there. Lots of
Interesting. So if I'm holding mine up to my thing here. Let's come back over here. So I'm actually a hair over, because these are 2.5 inch strips. I'm a hair over. So it's almost like with one side, I could use the point. With the other side, I need to use the inside V of the point. So that's funny. I like that. It's hard to avoid a fabric that has those, that doesn't have those. Like any pre-cut, you're most likely going to have, because it's just how they're machines. We should make a little petition or something that nothing should be cut like that anymore. So any more questions on that really quick before we move to, I'm going to just show you a little bit of quilting. This is super simple, but then I want to get into the patchwork program with doing some different shapes that may be a little bit more difficult and how this can be helpful too. So if we're good, and if not, feel free to just type them in. So I just have a quilted piece here. I just want to show you that, again, the benefits to having that IDT in the back there. So I don't have to have my walking foot. I can use whichever foot I really want here, but I'm going to engage that IDT. You definitely always want to have that IDT engaged if you are doing a sandwich of something together. So let's come back over here. We are going to turn our projection on, and I've already started a couple of these lines here, but I want to turn my grid on. I'm not going to worry about my stitch. Nope, I want that one on. I want my stitch preview off, because it doesn't matter where my sew line is. I want to know where my grid is. I'm going to go off of that. So, and then let's turn this stitch guide 1 off. And you'll notice also, if it's lit up, that means it's engaged. If it's not, that means it's not on. So my grid is on. My stitch guide 1 is off, but now it's on. So now you see that it's lit up. So that's how you know what is on within all of these subcategories. So I have my grid right here, and I like to do like zippy bags and things like that. Like I will put gifts inside of a homemade bag for somebody, and I like to just do that straight line quilting on it sometimes. And so with this grid, I've got this as big as I can be, 30 millimeters here. I've sewn a couple of lines already, but I'm just going to use my sew line and line it up with my projected line right here. Oh, and I still have, this isn't going to matter, or it is going to matter. I have 2.8 right here. I need to go back to 0 because my needle position, so it wouldn't be even. So, but I want you to watch this in the back here. Let me see. I'm going to get this going a little bit here. And I'm going to see. Amy's going to be like, you're going off script here. I know I am. Hold on, Amy. Bear with me, y'all. I want y'all to see that IDT in the back, that little walking foot move. Let's see. I just think it's really cool watching it go. And how it just sandwiches everything and moves it along so effortlessly. Look at that. Do you see that back there? He's just moving along. And I'm not going to have, so you'll notice when I get to the end, if you don't have a walking foot on and you have layers of fabric in between, like a quilt sandwich, whatever it is, you'll be able to see that the fabric starts to push and shift. And you're going to notice, look at that. My fabric is not shifted. It is there in the same spot like that. So let's cut that in. One little tip though, let me say this, is whenever I'm doing this, all of these lines back and forth. So I just sewed this one right here. I know it's hard to see, but I went from here to here. So now I'm going to come over here and go from here to here. So I'm going to turn it around just like this. And we're going to go this way. And the reason for that is you don't want to have all of your sewing. You don't want to go down, 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 because again, it will over time, it's going to shift that fabric just a little bit. With the IDT, it's not, but if you don't have a machine with the IDT, it will shift that fabric. So this is just my little personal tidbit on ways to help when you're sandwiching things and not having them shift. So we're going to go one way on this one, then we're going to come back up this way. And I like to start from the middle and work my way out also. I'm not going to start from the edge and then go all the way across that way. I'm going to start in the middle and work left and right. So that's just my little extra that you've got on there. So any more questions on the IDT or anything that you've done that's been helpful with keeping those together or piecing or anything like that before we move on to hexes?
I'm not seeing anything. I
Okay.
think you're good to go on.
Okay, awesome. So let me, oh, nope, that's closer. Let's pull that out just a little bit there. So I have a whole bunch of hexagons here. Hexagons are not fun to cut out. I will say that. If you like cutting hexagons out, great. I do not. So you can sort of see this little white guy, this little bitty thing right here, which is interesting because it's actually very large. That is my Singer Memento. All of my hexes, I have stacks and stacks of hexes because I have a plan of something I want to do. I'm going on a work trip in May. I'm going to H&H. So if anybody's going to be in H&H, feel free to stop by and say hi and see what I've done with my hexes. I have cut all of these hexes out, and I didn't have to do them. My machine did it. I placed my fabric on there, and it cut it out within 30 seconds, one layer of fabric there. Another thing that I did with my Memento is I added in, if you're used to sewing hexes, let me turn my projection off here. If you're used to sewing hexes, you know that you need to have your little points of where to start and stop, because you don't want to sew all the way across your hexes because you have to be able to spin them, to press them and things like that. So you're leaving 1/4 inch. You're sewing. If you see, let me see if I can find. So the pin that I used also, this is a heat away pin that I have on, that I had in my machine. So you'll notice it just goes 1/4 inch all the way around. So I'm going to start and stop right there. These are all the same measurement as we go. But what if I do a couple more stitches than what I needed to, or don't do enough stitches and I end up with like a little opening or things like that? So with the Patchwork program, let's talk about Patchwork program. It's going to be under Stitch Repeat. And again, this is going to be on those Creative Icon 2, Creative Icon 1, Creative Performance 950, and the Performance Icon. It might be on some of the other ones, but those are the ones we had just looked at beforehand. But you have right here, if you can see down here at the bottom, a little bit Stitch Repeat. And within that, you're going to have Patchwork program and Single Stitch program. So let's talk about Single Stitch program just real quickly, because that's not really what we're using today. Single Stitch program is if you want to do a set number of stitches. So say one of the other educators gave me a great example of something, because I was like, when would I use this? I haven't had a need for it yet, but maybe I have and I didn't know that I could. So she said, say you want to have a floating stitch. You want 10 floating stitches in the middle of 2 pieces of fabric. But then next to that, you want to have 9. And then next to that, you want to have 8. So you want to just have it like pyramid out. You can program it to where it will stop after 9 or after 8. You can program in how many stitches you want of a specific stitch so that you're not doing more than what you need. As long as your starting point is the same or whatever it is you want, then they will all fall into place evenly or at an angle or whatever it may be that you're looking for. So that is Single Stitch program. Patchwork program is what we're going to be using today. So Patchwork program, how that works, you are going to start sewing. Whatever stitch it may be, it can be a straight stitch, it can be a decorative stitch, whatever it may be, we're going to start sewing. And as we get to where we need to stop, so to one of these points, we are going to touch the reverse button on the machine. So if you can see my finger right here, right here. There is the reverse button. When I touch that reverse button, it's programmed in how many stitches I've done. So 15 stitches, 18 stitches, 20, whatever it may be. And then I can repeat that over and over again without actually sewing. I'm just going to press start and stop or use my foot pedal. That's why I have it programmed to swipe to the right of start and stop. So let's go through that. So I have 2 little pieces right here. I'm going to line these up. And I'm going to start. Oh, there he goes. He heard something. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm going to lower my needle right into where that point, where I meet at the corner right there. And I'm going to just put my presser foot down. So I'm going to start sewing just with my presser foot here. And I'm just doing a straight. Oh, hold on. I've talked about it and I haven't actually said it. So we're going to select Patchwork program right there. We want to make sure we've got this reverse on here and it'll see. So Let's start that over again. I talked about it and then didn't actually set it up.
Meredith,
Yes.
would there be any benefit to using like an open toe foot when you're setting this so you can see your stitches a little bit better?
You can. Let's put an open toe. I've got one in my little accessory tray right here. So again, there's millions of ways to do everything. Find what works best for you. I mean, to me, it's helpful to have that open toe foot on there, but I just lift my little foot up and I can see underneath it, so it's no big deal. But so I have my open toe foot on here now, and I can, let me get my hexies lined up again right here. I'm going to lower my needle right down into that corner. You can see it under there. And I'm going to, I have everything set over here, Patchwork program. I've got my reverse there. So now I'm going to start sewing and just have my finger right here on my reverse button and just sew down my line. And it programmed it in. So I was going kind of slow there. I'm going to do it a couple times. So that's 17 stitches right there. I actually am going to do one more because I've done a lot of these and I think I prematurely touched it. So 18. But that's what's nice is you can make those adjustments right here. You can go fewer if you've done a couple of them and you're like, that's still going into my seam, or if I want to go up a little bit because I'm not there, you can still make those adjustments there. So I'm going to cut my thread. And now that I have that programmed in there, I'm not going to do anything else. All I'm going to do is take another square here, or another hexagon here, line it up. And when you do hexes, you want to do them in a line, like a long line like this first, and then sew them together. That's what I found is easier to do. So we're going to, again, lower our needle into that point. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my multifunction foot control and I'm going to swipe to the right and it's going to sew and it stops all on its own. And then I'm going to swipe to the left and it's going to cut. Let me show you all something really quick. So whenever you plug in your multifunction foot control, a little screen will come up for you to make any changes or when you turn your machine on. But if you go into the settings, there's multifunction foot control. I can touch the setting or the function and change it right here on the screen. I don't have to unplug it. I don't have to turn my machine on and off. You have a heel function also. I personally have not been successful with the heel function. It's like where your foot goes and where your heel is. I seem to always push it. Don't set it as the cut or anything like that if you do that, or the start and stop. I just don't use it because I prematurely hit that all the time. I'm sure, Amy, you do on yours too. So we have stitch, restart, foot up and down, extra lift, all of those different functions that we can set to right there. So that's how you would change those if you wanted to. So if I wanted to save this, so if you were on the HV Live yesterday, the Husqvarna Viking Live, I said HV, it's abbreviated, Husqvarna Viking Live yesterday, it came up, can you save these? And I was in the background and I was sitting there and I was messaging Wendy and I was messaging Karen because I'm like, guys, what is this? I need to figure this out really quickly. I don't know. I haven't ever saved one. They said, yes, you can save these. So I have actually already saved one, but I'm going to show you how. So down here, you have your little heart save button. If you touch that, so I have hexi repeat and I'm just going to change it to, I had it as 18. I kind of want to know how many stitches it was, what the setting was. So I already actually have it as 18. So we're just going to make it 17 and we're going to touch save. So now to access that, if I come up here to my folder and your sewing stitches are going to be first here, there's my hexi repeat right there. And now it's programmed in there. So if you wanted to, if you were sewing hexes galore or whatever it may be, and you needed to step away or you were going to retreat and then you come home, vice versa, whatever it may be, and you had it set to what you wanted it at, you could save it in there and then turn your machine back on and start sewing that exact stitch length again or whatever it was. So let's do a couple more of those here. Does that make sense with how to do hexes and how the Patchwork program is super helpful? I'm going to do one more here to show you guys, Amy, and that's why it's going to give you all a couple seconds to type in some questions. I'm going to do one more here. Just like that. And then all I'm going to do, I wish you could see my foot. I'm going to swipe my foot. Oh. my IDT. I'm going to swipe my foot. Look right here. I had a pop-up come on that said I didn't have my IDT engaged, and it tells me which feet I should have right here and all of the settings I should have. So again, swiping my foot, and then it's going to stop. And then I'm going to swipe to the left and cut. So there's a bunch of those. Now, if we are going to put these all together now, so let's say I've got my little strip going on here. Just in case you haven't done hexies before, I kind of wanted to show you guys how to do them. We're going to do the same thing right here, but we want to make sure that our seam, this little seam that's back here, we want to make sure that that's folded away. We don't want to sew into that seam. So I'm going to lower my needle down, and I'm going to slow my machine down just a little bit. I've got it at full speed going there. We're going to start, stop, just like that, and then cut. And then we're going to line these guys up. Did I do that? I did that right. Yeah. We're going to line these next two up. And again, making sure that my seams go out so that I can sew between those 2 points there. Just like that. And we're going to start, stop. Oh, and I need to go a couple more. I didn't start at a good point. I can tell I needed to go a couple more. And that's the beauty of it, is if I didn't like, or it didn't go far enough, I can just do a couple more stitches with my foot pedal right there. So I want to do a couple more of these so I can unfold it and you guys can see what this looks like. Getting them all lined up. Yeah, see, it's like I need 2 more stitches. So now that I've had to do that twice, I'm actually going to increase here on my screen to 20 instead of 18, and watch, now it's going to be too close. Watch. I'm going to be going over my stitches. You good, Amy?
We had a good question come in here. Somebody wanted to know, can you program the cut in like you do when you're creating a sequence in this patchwork program?
So let's see. Let me sew this one down here. See, I don't know what I'm doing. Why is that not? Let's come back over here to our screen. Let me show you guys this really quick. So there are my hexies all sewn together. And I would just keep going. But that's why you want to do them in long strips. It's easier to work with versus putting one in and putting them all together like that. So this is a great question. I have this in here already. If I go to Sequence Creator, I haven't done this, so bear with me. I'm going to come up here. I'm thinking it's going to work. I come up here and I'm going to choose my Hexie Repeat, program that in right there, and then I'm going to, can I add in a cut right here? Add in a cut. You see that? So I went into, I'm going to touch OK. I went into Sequence Creator right here. And I'm going to find my program stitch. So that's the point. You do need to save it at this point. And right there, it's going to show up. And then I'm going to edit stitch and add a cut right there. So let's test that out. Let's come back over here and sew some together and see if it actually cuts. It should. So lower our needle down right there. We're going to start, stop. There you go. There you go. That's a great question and a great suggestion that I am going to be doing now when I sew all of these hexies together. I've just been sitting here, swiping my foot left and right, touching the scissors, and I'm like, that's a great, sometimes you don't think of the simple things. That's why I really was excited about this live, coming back to those basics of quilting and hopefully inspiring you to want to try some of the simple things again.
That's great. An excellent suggestion. I'm totally going to do that too. Thanks, Linda.
No, yes.
I'm looking to see. Elizabeth has a question that I'm going to ask you to clarify. She says, possible to demonstrate a divot by hand. I'm not sure what she means by that, so I'm going to ask you to clarify that in the comments, if you would, please.
Yeah, I'm sure I don't have a divot by hand, but maybe it's a term I just haven't heard. Educate me, teach me something new today. I haven't learned something. Well, I did learn something new. I added in the stop, but teach me something else new today.
And I have another question here that I missed earlier, so I said I'd come back to it. Somebody was wondering when you are back when you were piecing and you were setting up your 1/4-inch seam, do you have a best suggestion for a scant 1/4 inch?
Just one more click or two to whichever way you want to go. Because I know that scant 1/4 inch is just like a thread over. So it's really just adding in one extra click with your needle position, with your guide position, with whatever it may be. So.
And then someone asking if you don't have the, oh, I see. Okay. If you don't have the cutter, if you don't have an automatic cutting option, would you do anything differently?
Nope. I would just pull it out and snip it with my little scissors or use my thread cutter on the side. Nothing different. I will have threads at the end of it that I'll have to make sure are snipped and not on top, but it's no big deal.
I think that's all I see for right now.
Okay, I want to show you one more way to use Patchwork program. There's lots of ways to do it, but I thought of another way when I was playing around and getting ready today, and I was like, ooh, I want to do that really quick, and I've got 4 minutes, so I'm good on time. So I have just a basic little label made with love by Meredith if I wanted to make a label, and I used my grid to get everything lined up and get everything straight because they're not, I did this one first, and then I lined up my grid and did the next one and so forth, so everything looks straight, evenly, horizontally. I want to add like a little frame around that. So we're going to come over here and we're going to go to, stitch repeat, sorry, right here. And we're going to go to Patchwork program. I'm going to come up here and select, let's go to quilt, satin right there. I'm just going to come back. We're just going to do this basic zigzag. Whenever you select a certain stitch, you will sometimes have this little icon with a little triangle right here come up. And this means that you can do tapering. So you can change the end angle. Let me move this out of the way. So if I change that angle, you see how now I have an angle on there, or I've got a little point or a 45-degree angle that way, whatever it may be, you can have your angle just like that. So we're going to do a little frame around my little label right here. And then I could cut it out and sew it down or whatever it may be to my project. So I'm going to, I have that set and it's ready for me to just touch the repeat, or not the repeat, the reverse here in just a moment. So I'm trying to think. Let's turn our grid back on here. So I'm going to turn projection on and wait, oh, my grid should, yep, there's my grid popping up there. Let's go a little bit smaller. There we go. Let's try that. I'm gonna make this line up with this grid line right here so that I'm sewing right along there. Move it a little bit bigger there. And then I'm gonna come to the edge just a little bit.
Does it matter that you're still using your open toe foot? Somebody asked if you needed to change your foot. Or is it still good to use that open toe foot?
You can. The machine is smarter than we are. I mean, I would have done it with my open toe just because it's on there. But it does want us to have the 2A foot. And I am going to take the IDT off. I know you don't need that on it because of how it moves. So we're going to use the 2A foot because that's what our machine says. And we should do what it says sometimes. Our machine does know better than us sometimes. And it does want stabilizer. And I already have stabilizer behind this here as well. So we're going to line this up right here. And this was just a thought that I had as I was doing this. So it's going to do that taper angle down, that 45-degree angle down right there. And then it's going to do a satin line all the way across. And I'm going to do that satin line until I think it's roughly where I want it to be on the other side here. So go right there. And then it's going to taper back the other way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn, and this is not going to be centered on here, but you'll get the idea. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just touch my start stop button or use my foot pedal, and it's going to do that tapered angle down, and it's going to do the exact length that I just had right there. If you wanted an equal square what would be helpful to do probably too. Did it not? Why didn't it stop? Huh. Why did it keep going? Oh, it caught my thread too. I wonder, because I had it programmed in there. Let's try it again. We'll just do 2 sides of it this time. Caught my thread up. Hold on a second. My thread's getting caught on my spool stand over here. Just a second. Oh, now I'm going to drop it down. Here we go. All right. Let's try this again. So now we're just going to do 2 sides of it this time. We'll come back this way. So I have, let me show you all this again over here. I have Patchwork program and it's ready to go. It's got my taper and I'm just going to touch my reverse when I get to a point. So we're just going to start it and we'll do a 2-sided one there. So it's doing that tapering angle, that 45-degree angle down. And you can sort of get the idea right over here how those angles line back up. So we're going to go all the way and then I'm going to touch my reverse button and stop. There we go. Now, if you look at the screen, that's my distance. I didn't have that a minute ago. I wonder if I had deselected the patchwork or something like that. So that's 78 stitches right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn and get this lined up. We're going to touch start, stop, and keep going. And maybe I'll get lucky and it'll come right there, but I don't think I'm going to get that lucky. I think it's going to go past there a little bit, but you'll get the idea. It's going to stop. And now I'm just going to touch my scissors. What I would do is I would turn and keep going again there to make my complete box. But you sort of get the idea of how that works. So that's another way you can use Patchwork program is to get an even side if you wanted to. So it might be helpful to have made your square before you sew your letters in there. It just depends. It's a personal preference how you wanted it to line up there. So any other questions or comments or anything that's helpful for you with quilting and things like that?
I did have a quick question. What do you think is the best thing to do when you're piecing as far as needle up or down?
I do needle down.
Same.
For multiple reasons. You said same, Amy?
I did, yep.
Yes. So when I'm chain piecing, I like to have my needle down so that my presser foot is up a little bit. So if you look right here, if I put my needle in the down position, your presser foot's going to come up a little bit. So what I can do is if I had, let's do a couple squares here. If I had some squares that I was sewing together and chain piecing, I'm just going to, this is not going to work out at all with my stitch that I have on there. I need to do a straight stitch. Hold on. Nope, and that's not the one. 1 second. There we go. Okay. So we're just going to line up our fabric with our 1/4 inch marking on our thing here. So if I sew this at a 1/4 inch and I'm going to sew off, so chain piecing. So now my needle is down and I can pull that out just a little bit if I want to. But what I can do now is I can put my next piece of fabric or my next pieces I'm piecing right under there and keep going. If I stop with my needle in the up position, so I'm going to put it back as the up position so that when I get over here, my presser foot is still down and I can't, I mean, you can put another piece under there, but I just personally like to have it down, slide that out just a little bit and put that next one right there. So that's chain piecing. And then if you've got one of those fancy little tools that you put your rotary blades in, you just cut and cut, or you can just pull it to your thread cutter right there. And now I've got 4 or 3 little 2 blocks together. So needle down is my preference. But again, to each their own, whatever works best for you. There's always more than one way to do anything with sewing. Anything else, Amy?
I don't see any more questions.
Okay, awesome. Well, again, if you're watching this later, you come back and you have questions, feel free to type those in. We will see them and we'll get those answered for you. I do want to talk about our next Facebook Lives. Let me get my mouse here. It fell asleep since I haven't used it. So I am super excited. Next week, I talked a little bit about memento And next week, I'm going to be doing a 3-day camp on the My Sewnet North America Facebook and YouTube channel, Facebook page, where I'm going to go through creating your own SVG files, creating your own quilt pieces. Again, going back with the quilting because it's National Quilting and Crafting Month. So we're going to go through creating your own quilt pieces that you can cut. And then we're going to go more in depth. If you saw the My Sewnet Live on Tuesday that Sonny, Carly, and I did, we talked a little bit more about the new quilting crafting integration that we have. So I'm going to go through that again and go in more in depth, things like that, answer any questions. So that's going to be next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific on the My Sewnet pages. And then the next Pfaff Live is going to be, where are we? It is going to be with Claire. She is our Canadian educator, and she's been on our lives a couple times. She's super knowledgeable. She's going to be doing free motion quilting and quilting feet. So she's going to be doing more free motion. I didn't go too much into it today. I wanted to show you a couple things on settings, but I think she's going to go through that. So I'm going to hold off on showing you that and let her. I'm not going to steal her thunder. So that's going to be on March 20th. And again, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific on the Pfaff channels on Facebook or YouTube with Claire, our Canadian educator. So if there is not any other questions, again, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I definitely learned a couple things that I'm excited to take away from my sewing and quilting journey. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.